All right, here is part 2 of the sculpting a silly monster guy in Blender. And in this time, I'm going to paint it. So before I start painting it, I will show you that I did a couple things since the last video to kind of improve it a little bit. A couple things that I did is that I'll show you in the sculpting tab. I took the brush, which was called the scrape brush, and I used it to do a little bit of sort of um, definition of, so you see here, if it's kind of sharp there. If I use this thing, if I use this brush, I can add sort of planes to areas, flattening them and making them look a bit more sort of graphic or defined. For example, I'm going to do it over here, and that way I can kind of have like a more planar looking, whoops, that was very strong, that's smooth, a more planar looking sculpture. So it kind of gives it a bit more stylized thing. I did that in a few areas. I did that, first of all, let me turn my smoothing back up. Scrape. I did that along the nose a little bit to give the kind of cartilage here of the nose. I did it, kind of along the nasolabial folds and different stuff. I also did it on the horns and the teeth a bit to give them a bit more definition. I'm going to just smooth this a bit because I'm seeing this is still super rough, so smooth that down. And so, for example, I went on the teeth, and I did the same thing with this smoothing brush, or sorry, with this planer brush, or it's called scrape. And that way you could kind of define, teeth, that you see the different planes of the teeth. So you could kind of do that. I'll do an exaggerated version so you can really see what it does. If I really go nuts, I'll do like, it flattens areas out like that. So I can make certain areas look really flat, and that way you can define the planes of a form. So once again, if I go here, I can define this plane. I can do that there on the horns. I can do that there on the face, whatever I want to do. In this case, this is a little bit too planar, so I don't want it to look like that much. And I just went here and there and, moved around some things so they looked a little bit less silly. And then I also took the draw sharp brush and drew a few kind of more creases and stuff in the lips to give the lips a bit more of some kind of very, very basic detail, even though it's obviously not detailed. And I did the same thing. I kind of went in and did some forehead wrinkles in certain places with the draw sharp brush. And that's really about it. There ain't no detail on this thing. Oh, underneath should be smooth. Okay, so let's get to the coloring. So I'm still staying in sculpt mode. And I guess Blender recently added the colors to the sculpt mode. So what I've done here is I have created a plane. I added a plane in object mode. Plane. Basically, I just did Shift A, added a plane. That always adds it in this orientation. If I press R, X, 90, it flips it to where it's facing me. And then I just scaled it up and moved it aside. So I'm going to delete that because I don't need that. And once I had a plane, I subdivided the plane many, many, many times. So you'll see now, if I go on the plane, it's very high poly. It'll take a while. It's so high poly that it's just going to look like orange, but it's very, very high poly, as you can see. The reason it's high poly is because this is vertex paint. Vertex paint is painting on the actual model, and you're only painting the vertices. So that means you need a high poly model so that you actually can do any kind of sort of detailed coloring. Because in sculpting, you often remesh it. You often use detailed models or high poly models for sculpting. So vertex paint works very well for models that are kind of remeshed and done and where there's a lot of polygons. Vertex paint does not work at all if you just have a simple cube. It won't work. For example, if I put a cube on, let's do it. Let's put a cube. Cube, I'll just solo the cube. If I go into sculpt mode, and I'm going to show you what vertex paint is in a second. And I go to this paintbrush here, and I just pick some color. I'll just pick like red. And I do the big paintbrush. You're going to see what happens. It is painting the vertices. It's why it's called vertex paint. It's not painting the faces. It's only gonna, it's painting the actual vertices. So this is not really doing anything, and I cannot possibly get any kind of detail like this. If I go to another color, it's not doing anything. It's only going to do something when I hit the vertex. Eh? So this is not useful at all for doing any kind of detailed coloring on low poly models, but it's very useful for high poly models. So I will get rid of this, delete it, and unsolo it and go back to my monster, which is kind of high poly. So let's go back and let's start to paint this thing. So I go to sculpt mode. I go down to this brush, which is kind of near the bottom. And now I'm suddenly have all these different colors. I have a palette of whatever color I want. Now, what I did is I took my plane and I actually painted a bunch of colors on the plane so I could kind of pick them and choose them. But you don't have to do that, but I did that. And all you have to do is go up here and choose the color that you would like to paint your monster with. So I'm going to choose this color and I start to paint and my monster is now turning green. So I'm going to paint my monster. And this, when you paint stuff, the first thing you do is you add the base color. The color that is the basis of the whole monster, in this case the monster. The base color is for anything. If I was painting a sword or a car or a horse or whatever, you would start with a color that is the underlying color. In this case, the color that I chose, I don't really like it very much. It's a bit too saturated. So I'm going to change it a little bit. Actually, I want a color like this. So I have my palette here. What you can do is take the little eyedropper tool and click it on that. Sometimes it kind of makes it a bit too gray though. So I'm going to use, it's still a bit too gray. I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. Okay, I'll keep it like that. Okay, so there is my base color. Now I'm going to add a shadow color, which is going to be kind of a bluish color in this case. And I will go over here to the secondary color and I'll add kind of a grayish blue. I'll make it a bit darker. And now here's the interesting thing. I have these two colors here. I can shift between the two colors by pressing Control. So right now if I press Control, I'm shading it with this darker color. By the way, I want to make sure my screencast keys are enabled. And they seem to not really work in sculpting mode, unfortunately. So I'll have to just explain what I'm doing. I don't really know why that's the case. Okay, so if I press Control, I have the secondary color. Now, I can control the strength of the paint in the same way I can control the strength of the sculpting brush by here. So now if I use my color, I'm only putting a little bit of this blue. I'm not just bombarding it with blue. So I can use this to create basically sort of a secondary color, which you want when you paint stuff. You don't want things to just be one color. Nothing really is just one color. Usually it's a combination of colors. So I put it on very strongly. What I do if I press Shift now, I can blend it. I can blend the paint. So I'll give you an example here. I'll just do like a big stripe. Come on. Hello. And something weird happened. I'm not really sure why it happened. Okay, there we go. Okay, so if I do this, and something is still, oh, I know why. If I do this, and I press Shift after, I can blend the color. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press Control. I'm going to put some of this darker color. Well, that's so sloppy. It's way too sloppy. I'm going to solo this first of all. I'm going to paint a little bit of this darker color in here, and I'm going to make a big brush, and I'm going to blend it. I keep hitting the wrong button. Control, and then blend it. I'm going to blend that there too. Okay, I'll unhide it now. Okay, I'm going to go in these nostrils and make my secondary color. Oh my God, that's way too strong. My brush is 1,000 times too large. So that was much, 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 much too strong. That's funny. 0.3. And I'm going to blend the heck out of it. Now, I don't ever do this with a mouse. I don't paint with a mouse, but now I'm painting with a mouse, which is not recommended. But if you got to paint with a mouse, you paint with a mouse. And I'm doing it with a mouse so that I can, again, so I can demonstrate that it is possible to do Blender with the most basic of equipment. You know, just in this case, literally a mouse. I'm using a mouse. I click the mouse, I click the mouse. In the words of Helga Schneider, German singer, I click the mouse, I click the mouse. He has a song that says, that's the name of the song. I click the mouse, I click the mouse. It's a great song. Okay, I'm just adding a bit of this bluish color to different areas. And there's something I'm going to do, which I should have done before, and I'm going to do it in a second. Well, first of all, I'm going to paint the lip with this bluish color. Bluish color. So this guy has more than just green. He's more than just green. He's not one-dimensional, this football-headed monster. He's two-dimensional, with the illusion of being three-dimensional. Okay. Okay, the thing I should have done before was to combine the ears with the face, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to select the ears. First of all, I'm going to take the ears, and I'm going to apply the mirror modifier. Now I'm going to do that, select the head, click join, and now I can paint them both at the same time, which is going to be a little bit easier. So I'll go back to my sculpting mode. I will go back to my regular color. I will paint these ears if I can actually do so. There we go. And I just overlapped onto the face, which I didn't want to do. Do that. And now I can go back and use my secondary color, which is, of course, 1,000 times too strong. And do the blue in the inside of part of the ears. Blend it, and I'll make the tips of the ears a little more blue so that it looks more interesting and looks more nice. I'll add a bit of that blue to the bottom here. Not being very precise at all, as you can tell. Normally I would to do a adult kind of paint job, I would do all these different colors and make everything look like real skin. But in this case, it's a sort of children's type of monster. All right, I will say that that's okay for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add some highlights. So if I have my little palette here, let's see if this is a good highlight color. It's probably much, much, much too dark and much too yellow. So I'm going to go to the greenishness of it all, and I'm going to lower the strength, and I'm going to make my brush really big, and I'm going to see if this is going to actually add highlights. Will it? Will this color be okay? Seems to be okay. Just adding a bit of highlights. Also going to add just, okay. Other thing I want to do is I'm going to really make the nostrils very dark, because it's always a good thing to do. And so I will select, oh, I selected I will go in here and select basically the black, and go in there and paint that in there, so that his nostrils have some sort of fake depth. And I will also do the same thing inside the mouth, but I can be really, 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 really careful to not make it look crappy. And while I'm at it, I'm gonna add a little bit of some kind of very, very, very basic breakup. So breakup meaning kind of like veins, but not really veins, just color variation. Actually, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to use, actually, I'm going to try something. I'm going to use a texture in my brushes. The texture that I'm going to use, I'm going to put on a texture here. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to use a clouds texture, which is going to give me a preview in a second, hopefully. Clouds, hello. Hi, clouds. Where are you, clouds? And I don't have the preview. I don't know why I'm not getting a preview. Okay, well, we'll forget about the texture for a second. And we will continue. And we'll continue making base color on stuff. The other thing I did is I actually did connect the horns and the teeth. And that way I could do them both at the same time. Or maybe I didn't yet. Let's see. Yes, I did. Okay. So the horns and the teeth are now connected because they're both bone color. I'm going to paint them. So I'm going to choose a color which is more of an ivory color, yellowish, kind of grayish ivory, a bit more like that. Pump up that and put the base color on my horns and me teeth. I'll probably make it a bit more yellow and a bit brighter. Okay, and now I'm going to add a bit of a darker color on the bottoms, kind of like the sort of tobacco stains. You always have it on the well, that is way too much, as you can probably tell. But I'm going to add it on the bottom parts here. It's a lot easier if I just solo them, and that way I can go on the bottoms like that and give it sort of like a, you know, like it sort of stains and stuff, like, you know, kind of tartar kind of stains. He doesn't brush his teeth very much, this guy. And I'm adding just a little tiny bit of, I don't even know if you can call it detail, but I'm going to call it detail. A little bit of detail there. Okay. And a very small amount there. Whoops, that wasn't very straight. And I'm going to add a little bit of high, I'll unsolo it now. And I'll add a little bit of very almost bluish tip to it, to the tip of it, to give it a bit of sort of fake translucency, really light. Maybe a little bit more than that. See, giving it a bit of almost a no, that's too much. But the teeth, it's very useful. The tips of the teeth, if you give them this kind of, well, not that much, if you give them this kind of very, very subtle bluish color, it has a kind of a fake hint of translucency. And I'll just blend it in. Might add a little bit more bluishness, but so subtle and so light that you just don't really even see it at all. Just to give it a bit of a nicer bone color. Okay, now I'm going to paint the hat. And the hat is really going to be kind of like starting off with a very dark brown. Oh, better pump that up. I'll do this, and then I'm going to do a highlight on top. And the highlight is going to be kind of a much more of a tan color. And if I play my cards right and I go right from the top, I keep blending it, I'll have sort of a highlight. Yeah, that looks nice. Ooh, looks like too much of a stripe. We'll undo that last stroke because it looks bad. Notice I'm using kind of like very large brush strokes for all this kind of stuff. It's keeping it very silly and kind of cartoony looking. Just saved it so I don't lose all of this. Maybe make it a little bit brighter. Do a final highlight on the top. Okay. And now the eyes. All right. So the eyes, I have a few choices for the eyes. The eyes are kind of a bit difficult to paint in a really precise way with the brush. So I have a thing I'm going to do. I'm actually going to split up the eyes into different parts, and I'm going to color it in a different way. So first of all, let me go to object mode and go to edit mode. Okay, so I have these different sections of the eyes. Let me solo them. I want to split the difference. I want the sclera. The sclera is in me it's the white part, but in this monster it's going to be kind of orange. It's the kind of the white part of the eye in a human. So I want to split the sclera and the pupil, which is going to be black, and the iris, which is going to be more of a orangey, darker orange color. I want to split the actual model in pieces so that I can color each piece separately, and it's going to be very easy to make them crisp. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, I have to select, I'm going to start by selecting the actual iris, or the pupil, I mean. So I'm going to do that by just doing that. Actually, I have to go to face mode, sorry, face mode. So if I expand my selection, I have number pad. So let me put back my screencast keys because now I'm not in edit mode and there's no reason why this shouldn't work. There we go. If I expand the selection by pressing Control plus, or if I went to select, I could do select more. And I basically want to get the whole black part, which was one less. It was that. Okay, that's basically the pupil. So what I want to do here is a couple things I do. It for now, I'm going to just make it a vertex group. So I'm going to do assign. Now, if I select that, now that is saved as a vertex group. That's going to be called pupil. Okay, what I'm going to do right away is I'm actually going to separate it from the rest of the mesh. Separate selection. So this is now separated. It's not the same mesh anymore. All right, I'm going to go to this and I'm going to select that. Expand my selection until I get all the iris. And I am going to separate that. So P, separate by selection. And then finally I have this sclera. So I might undo it after, but at least now I have these things separated. I might join them back together. We'll see. All right, so if I go to object mode now, if I go to my, I unsolo it, now I have these here. This now I'm going to paint I'm going to just start by painting the iris. It's going to be the much easier thing. So if I go into sculpt mode and I go and I choose just black, and I'll solo that thing. And this is going to be a bit of an annoying thing to do because they're very low poly, but there we go. Done. All right, next. Now I'm going to go here, no, and select that. Okay, now I'm going to give this kind of like a dark orangey color, like almost like a red actually, a reddish color. Okay, and I'm actually going to do a bit of a highlight on the bottom part of it. Whoop, no, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to smooth that one. No, 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 no. And I'll darken it a little bit. Smooth it. All right. And then the final thing, I will now select these part of the eyes, solo it again. And, oh, that's interesting. Okay. Solo it again. And now I'm going to paint this, that kind of more orange color. I don't think it was that dark. It was not that dark. Maybe I will do even more of a highlight there, but not that saturated. And then I'm going to go on the border of this thing, make it a bit darker. Whoa, that does not look good. No, I'll keep it like that. Okay, so now I have my basic coloring. I want to actually, I can see that where is it? The irises should be slightly lighter, slightly darker, I mean. Or no, slightly lighter maybe. I'll see. I'll see what looks best. If I make it so there's a bit more of a contrast. Is this not happening? What's happening here? I see what's happening here. Face to face with greatness, and it's strange. Open your eyes. Oh, I know what I'll do. I need to darken the actual what's called the limbus in a real eye, and I will solo it. The limbus is the outside of the iris, the darker part on the outside of the iris. Because there's no contrast there, it's looking kind of strange. So I'm going to darken that, make it actually quite dark, and I'll see if I can actually do that. Let's see if I can. If I can slightly darken that. Just that part. And then I can smooth it after. All right, let's see if that worked. Let's see if that added a bit of contrast. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, cool. Actually, I can even go a bit further there. And then, as a final touch, in the inside, once again, I'm going to do really a much more of a highlight, the kind of red highlight. Then these the sclera, I'm going to make them more yellow, so there's difference between the two. Oh, I should have to do that. No, that's too orange. It should be more yellow. Okay, that's cool. And again, the pupils themselves, where are the pupils, should be like pitch black. I think the color I used was not pitch black. It was kind of a darkened red or something, but that should just be black. So maybe it was and maybe it wasn't. Okay, let's just say it was that. Okay, cool. All right, so there we go. We have a colored monster that you have done with vertex paint. And now you can kind of go and, like I would go probably back and I'll, darken some of the areas there so that there's more contrast. And whatever you want to do with your monster, you can go crazy. It's your, as Bob Ross said, it's your world and you're in control. And when I'm in the real life, the only control I have is taking out the trash. But when I'm painting, I can do whatever I want. I can create a happy little vein. I can create a happy little ogre. I can create a sad little ogre. Whatever I want. I can create anything. So that's what's good. You can do whatever you want. And obviously, this is just a silly football head monster, but you can go crazy. So that is the basics of painting in Blender.